there might even be questions around its legality. So it's 19 hospitals.
So patients groups haven't been consulted, the public hasn't been consulted?
That's the impression we're giving. I mean, a lot of people are saying it's full of jargon and vague assertions, the story says, so we don't even necessarily know what's going on and it's hard to unpick. But the top line seem to be 19 NHS hospital closures and steering care back into the community, away from the emergency ward. And there's even talk about virtual doctors. And in one case, it says here, potentially using libraries to see patients within communities. Are there even any libraries left, you have to ask?
This all, David, it might all be great, mightn't it? It might be a brilliant idea. I mean, the Eye is saying that it's covering this on, what, 7 pages? It's so big. The fact is, no one's heard of this.
On the one hand, credit where credit's due. You, as a newspaper person, are surely going to tell me this is an old-fashioned scoop.
Absolutely.
And there's no doubt about that. So that's one side of it. But Claire mentioned the 19 hospitals, including 5 major acute hospitals, are marked for closure to plug this £22 billion black hole in funding. And it may come as a bit of a shock to people in places like St Helier and Epsom and Croydon and Kingston and Ealing, and that's in the south before you get to the Black Country and Bournemouth and Poole, that their hospitals are under threat tonight. And, you know, that's what we're talking about, remodelling the NHS in England after an analysis of 44 regional plans. The heart of the NHS is to move, if these plans were to be developed, from the hospital closer to the patients, the homes of the patients, to the community, with some notable exceptions. More big centres, for example, something close to some of us, stroke units are going to be centralised more than they are, and that, it is presumed, will be good news for stroke sufferers. Likewise, we're told for other services, major trauma services.
So more specialist, large units dealing with 1 or 2 crucial issues. So you've got all the specialisms in one place. As I say, on the face of it, this makes sense. But there's been no consultation, according to the Eye. That seems to be the most bizarre thing.
And we should also mention the loss of nearly 3,000 jobs, it says here, to create, I quote, a smaller, more agile workforce.
Yeah. You don't reorganise without losing jobs, do you?
Well,
right. Look, you don't have to be a genius to suggest this will cause a row to end all rows politically.
Well, one wonders if the NHS can take any more, but this could be round the corner. The Telegraph. Claire, a cancer pill denied to 500,000 women. Now, this apparently is because GPs don't know this pill actually works for cancer.
It's quite an extraordinary story, isn't it? This is a pill, this is tamoxifen, which in 2013, NICE said should be prescribed to women who have a medium to high risk of breast cancer, i.e. have a family history of it, essentially, which is 500,000 women, as you say. The advice is out there, NICE have given it the thumbs up, and yet doctors just don't seem to be prescribing it. 24% of doctors, the University College London has found in its research, were aware of the guidance but aren't doing this. And this is a drug that can really reduce the chances of breast cancer. I think you take it every day for 5 years, and then that protection can last for 2 decades. So imagine not only the benefits that can have to women's lives, but the benefits that can have to the NHS.
Why is this happening? Why are they not prescribing it?
Isn't it?
But the medical profession, the defence of this will surely be the medical profession and tablets, the right tablets and the right treatment is moving on at such a pace. And hang on a minute, I might be a GP who's been working for 30 years. No wonder they're all retiring early, or we're told lots of them are. I mean, the really worrying thing is in the very first paragraph of this story that says GPs are unaware they should be providing this drug. Now, that's extraordinary.
Well, it strikes me as completely bizarre because the story then goes on to say that tamoxifen is only licensed for treating breast cancer. So if they're unaware they should be prescribing it for breast cancer patients, well, what's... I mean, it's a well-known drug.
Confused
Very
you will
confused.
be. That is a very, very odd story. OK. Staying with the Telegraph, though, David. Bank of England behind Co-op sale. Apparently they don't have a deep enough war chest for bad times. Their capital fund isn't deep enough, so they're going to flog the place.
Well, that is the role, to be fair, of the Bank of England, surely, to tell us when the banks, individual banks, are in some difficulty or might be in some difficulty in terms of the new capital rules that were introduced after all the problems of 2008. But you know, the problem with the Co-op Bank, which some of us have a lot of time for, and its customers, as far as one can see, always talk about the excellent service, the customer service they get there, is that the brand, the Co-op Bank brand, the perception of the Co-op Bank suffered enormously in 2008, and then various other more personal events nearer to the former chairman since. And for a bank to recover its image, its perception, is immensely difficult. Ask RBS.
Sure. But Claire, for those people who are still with the bank, it's a critical bank, not just because it deals with their cash, but because of its ethical background. And they see that as vital to why they bank with it. And I interviewed a guy from one of the... this evening who was saying, look, there will be takers out there who have the same ethical responsibilities and the same ethos as the Co-op, and if not, then sell it to the shares, sell it to the customers themselves, which has happened before on the continent in France.
I should think the Co-op Bank's 4 million customers would be in fear tonight of it being bought up by some huge other bank and, you know, subsumed. You know, it seems that they are, as you say, very loyal to the brand, but they must be worried. I mean, we've got to a stage where in the first half of last year it had £177 million of losses. They're expecting, you know, they haven't got the full year figures, I don't think, yet, but they're expecting significantly more. And hedge fund managers and the owners are refusing to put more money into it because they don't think it's viable. So,
but it would take a lot of, I mean, whoever buys it is going to have to stump up tens of millions just to begin with to refloat or to, you know, sort of deepen those sort of rainy day pockets that are needed by banks these days.
Who's going to buy it?
Well, good question. Very good question. OK, The Guardian. President Trump there and Prime Minister Trudeau. Behind the scenes, two very, very different characters, pretty much chalk and cheese, it has to be said, Claire, but in front of the cameras, trying to find common ground on a range of issues, and an interesting meeting.
Yes, as you say, very different men and trying very, very hard to appear diplomatic, especially in this picture, which you're probably aware has gone viral online, and there's lots of memes appearing already.
What's that? What's that? I don't want to take your hand.
His hand. It's exactly.
No, I do want to take your hand. He's about to shake his hand, so we shouldn't.
He shook hands with a woman Prime Minister, didn't he? Somewhere else a few weeks ago?
He did indeed.
I think it's the New York Times that said Justin Trudeau is kind of mentally going through a pros and cons list in this picture, kind of thinking whether he should take the hand or not. But no, seriously, I mean, it was a diplomatic meeting, I think it's fair to say, both treading carefully. Trudeau saying that he wasn't going to lecture Trump, that that's not his job and that's not what the Canadian people would want him to do. I don't know what they've achieved, really. They've kind of shaken hands.
Well, hang on a minute.
They've trod carefully.
Perhaps they did achieve something, because one of the other papers has Ivanka Trump meeting with Mr. Trudeau, and of course we're told that the neighbouring countries. The two countries have launched a new task force called the United States-Canada Council for the Advancement of Women Business Leaders, Female Entrepreneurs. I've got that out in one go.
That's catchy, isn't it?
Yeah. That is very, very catchy.
I should have put all those letters together and see what it makes. Now, but Ivanka Trump, the serious point is she's right in there at the heart of what's going on in that administration.
Yeah, and Trudeau sat next to her, as you say, on the front of the Telegraph.
But the continuing problem with the Trump family is that she has a massive business. And if she is sort of part of trade initiatives, considering she has a huge business, then, I mean, is there a conflict of interest there?
Potentially, and we're told that it was her that secured the female executive members of this new group and is really at the centre of it. So, yeah, I think potentially she could be criticised.
Interesting. OK, Huffington Post. I think we can bring this up on our monitors here. Huffington Post online, of course, pension rise to be kept despite retirees being better off than working household, confirms Theresa May, David.
Yes, well, you know, I heard about this story during today, And you know, I as a person who, as I have to, seem to say rather too regularly on this slot on BBC News, of a certain age,
Barely. Barely.
Yeah,
Barely.
but successive government. Let's be fair to the baby boomers generation and all the rest of it.
Why?
Well, we should be, because
Okay,
I'm one
okay.
of them.
All right,
I want
'cause
you
you're
to
one
be-
of them.
I want
Okay.
you to be fair to me. Successive governments.
I always am. Yeah.
Successive governments have at last, in the past 10 years, reversed generations of not looking after the elderly. Some of us would argue, and you know, I'm surprised by this story that the number 10 spokesman is confirming that Theresa May is going to keep this triple lock, the so-called triple lock. It's a manifesto commitment. It will be kept. That they were saying, but you know, this. I think people must be aware that, you know, the other thing that I was associated when I first saw this story was about savings.
Yes.
You associate older people with savings, and unless I'm much mistaken, savings rates for the past 3 or 4 years have
been dreadful.
Horrendous.
Absolutely dreadful. And that's an important point, Claire. The other point is that it's not necessarily pensioners getting richer. It's actually that the rest of us, I say us, barely me, are getting
Your
poorer.
age always comes up.
That's funny, that, isn't it? Are actually getting poorer. It's stagnant
Absolutely.
wages and the triple lock that have affected this, really.
Yeah, and as somebody also of a certain age,
Yeah.
just a millennial,
Just-
I think, just scraping in there. This is a very important story for us. I mean, we're the first generation who are not going to be wealthier than
you
the one
angry?
that went before us.
Are you angry
I
about
am
it?
angry.
Yeah.
What was there was a story the other day saying...
And I'm
if-
angry for you and for my daughters and my
Well,
grandchild.
that's a very
as
important
well.
point, that actually
Yeah.
that baby boomers and beyond probably are very concerned exactly for their children and their grandchildren. So nobody's necessarily that happy at this outcome.
Should the triple lock stay then? It should go.
I think it will go, whether it should, because I suspect that our successors in 10 or 15 years will be having the opposite conversation, because I don't think it's sustainable.
Yeah, but on election day, the point is you get up and you go and vote. Isn't that the point?
I hope very much.
Whereas Claire's sort of, I don't know, watching Watford football matches
Well,
on
I
telly.
hope that
Twiddling
your
my thumbs.
generation
Twiddling your
will
thumbs.
get out there and vote.
That's
More than you have-
that's
some of you have,
Exactly.
maybe.
That's probably going to
That's
have to
us
be
told.
part of it. All right. Claire David, it's been good having you in, looking at some of the stories behind the headlines. Many thanks for that. That's it for the papers. Don't forget, you can see the front pages of all of them online on the BBC News website. It's all there for you, 7 days a week at bbc.co.uk/papers. And if you miss the programme any evening, you can watch it a little bit later on at your leisure with a glass of Beaujolais while watching iPlayer. Thank you, Claire and David, and to you for watching. Goodbye.